I don't know who these Charlie Kirk fanboys think they're fooling when they post their "Why I Left the Left" diatribes. We see this for what it is: performative theater that is irresistible clickbait for the far right, confirming that it is the left that is irrational and entirely hostile to white men. Which is why they had no choice but to be far right. Don't you see? No choice! Because it is their experience and expectation not just to be welcomed into any space with open arms and complete acceptance, but to be given special treatment, prioritized over others, and elevated into leadership. Because if a space is hostile to you, you can't enter it. This is why there are no working class people, or women, or people of color, or queer folks in politics at all. Due to the long history of it being hostile to, if not designed specifically to exclude everyone but wealthy white men. Or perhaps what they're signaling is that men like themselves are far too weak to deal with hostility, the hostility everyone else had to deal with to eke out a place in politics for themselves. I can certainly believe that Charlie Kirk fans are far too weak to deal with any of this hostility, but in reality, they feel oppressed because we are not willing to elevate them above everybody else as they are accustomed to. They are not capable of working with and treating people of diverse backgrounds as equals, and see our inclusion in the discussion, our perspectives, and especially our grievances being treated as equally important as a threat. Their bigotry against people unlike them causes them to assume that anyone who isn't a cishet white guy who holds a position of power does not belong there and could only have that if they were given an unfair advantage. As they have no class consciousness, and the liberation of marginalized groups is the only answer they've been given for why working class men are seeing their lives get worse and worse, they direct this justified anger for how they suffered at the hands of the powerful onto the powerless, onto fellow workers who face all the same challenges in addition to the systemic oppression that is escalating as one by one the few guardrails that kept them from constantly facing open hostility at every turn are being torn down. But let's be honest, there is no lack of white men on the left, and white men are still overrepresented in positions of power, prominence, and leadership on the left. I wish we were the egalitarian utopia that never mirrors the challenges of the marginalized that are the status quo. This warped perspective is how we know that these men claiming to be new fans of Kirk and the far right were never here. But even if they were, they never showed up for us. They were a burden and not a benefit, and we are so much better for the lack of them. There is no war on whiteness. There is no war on men. There is a fight for equality that may feel like oppression to those ignorant and accustomed to their privilege, who feel personally attacked when it is exposed. It takes strong, thoughtful, intelligent, and compassionate men to acknowledge all the ways they have benefited and continue to benefit from systemic oppression without seeing it as a personal attack on their worth as a person, morality, or achievements. This does not describe the people who are fans of Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA, who are threatened by equality because of their own inadequacies or fear of them. He attracts and exploits men so insecure because of all the ways they've internalized patriarchy that they are terrified of being unneeded. They fear that they have nothing of value to offer. They need systems of oppression to assert their importance. Reactionaries don't seek equality with their peers to be genuinely valued for their actions, skills, personality, character, or whatever unique qualities they could offer if they were willing and able to be a bit vulnerable and bust out of the mold of hegemonic masculinity that so many use as a shield to deflect emotional pain and deep insecurities they aren't willing or able to cope with in healthy and productive ways. And while their pain may be real and tragic, so is the pain they cause to the people they are bigoted against. It is an easy choice for us. Bigots, or the people they are bigoted against that will feel less safe and be less safe if we tolerate bigotry in our ranks. The fact is, the left welcomes white men. We always have. But while they may be the vast majority of the owning class, they are the minority of the working class. They always were. Bigoted white men especially are the minority when compared to everybody else, and a detriment rather than a boon to liberating all working people and building class solidarity. And we will welcome them, as long as it is as equals and like anyone else, as long as they are willing to ditch and work to overcome their bigotry, and as long as it isn't at the expense of the marginalized. But if they expect to assert themselves as oppressors, if they insist that they are superior and more important than everybody else, and everything that is not centered around them is oppressive to them, unfair, they are not welcome here, and they have no one to blame but themselves, and the powers that be that convince them that hatred was the best path that will use and abuse them, luring them in by assuring them that their bigotry is justified and nothing to be ashamed of, rewarding them at the expense of everybody else. But ultimately, I appreciate these men for confirming what we all suspected was true. They are motivated by hatred and supremacy, not by solidarity, and thus I thank them for confirming that they are no comrade of mine. And I intend to make sure that white male supremacy and all forms of bigotry are always a path that leads to the right.